Astro Boy, Sensei, and Me, an introspection on martial arts. Written and narrated by Keith Mosher. Histories. Logue Sensei got a house and a yard of his own, and our training moved there. Many times we sat in his living room and heard stories. Seiyu Oyata had trained in a style called Motobu, the way of Motobu. It was some descendant or offshoot of Shiriji Kempo, way of the hammer hand, as I recall. It is important to remember oral histories can be riddled with errors, especially when translating different languages. Additionally, winners always rewrite histories. After another year or so, Sensei moved to Barnwell, a city a bit too far away for me to get to easily. There he opened a more official yet traditional school. Unlike the small band of his first students, there were fees to be paid, but of course the building had to be supported. I had finished high school and was heading on to college. I did manage to make enough visits to the new school to be awarded my brown belt. After that, there simply was not the time. First came college, then came marriage, then came my daughter in a baby carriage. The message of the honorable outsiders, dripping with integrity, still pervade. Mr. Miyagi taught Daniel, the Karate Kid, the ancient arts, both external and internal. Miyagi seemed like a shorter and thicker version of Logue Sensei, right down to the mustache. Miyagi was an Easterner in the Western world, making him a bit of an outsider, which only completed the connection between him and Sensei. Sensei was a Westerner wearing a kyogi, just as Miyagi was an Easterner wearing khakis. Daniel was also an outsider, a younger version of myself, a scrawny nerd in a big, tough world. It seems this was part of the message. There is a place for the outsider, a place where one can find peace and protection, confidence with humility. Integrity is a major player. It is okay to be different. Just be true to yourself. There was Mr. Spock again. Infinite diversity in infinite combinations. Every school has their lineage. Every lineage suggests their way is the better way. The lineage in history is always complete, from first creator right down to the snot-nosed kid that just smeared fudgesicle on his kyogi. The martial arts appear vested in these lineage histories. Wing Chun has a fascinating and lyrical lineage tale. With a little investigation, you can find there are several variations of it, but they all have some commonality. A woman, usually the Shaolin nun Ning Mui, observed a stork battling a snake, or perhaps she and the stork battled over her morning breakfast. Regardless, the woman observes the stork blocking with its feet and striking with its beak at the same time. The woman develops techniques based on this idea, combining it with her kung fu training. Some say she did this in Wang Chun County. Some say her first student was a girl, Yim Wing Chun, so the nun named the style after her. In many of the tales, the young woman, or the nun, defeats a huge marketplace brute. The young student marries and teaches the style to her husband. In some variations, her future husband watches her through a window as she trains, and is detected because he sneezes or coughs. Regardless, the style somehow moves on to a man, because in those days a woman could not possibly be expected to teach a good style. Chivalry may be dead, but chauvinism has always been alive and real. After the initial creator, various names are bandied about, usually in a straight line to you, the practitioner. Most Wing Chun histories come together under Ip Man, though there are some other threads, such as Jui Wan. At these points, actual records exist, so the lineage becomes less fuzzy. The thing about lineage stories is we all accept them from the outset. You have respect for your instructor, so whatever he or she tells you must be so. The lineage story usually portrays some valiant person or the defeat of some oppressor. We all want to be like those great heroes. In addition, we tend to associate the first name in the lineage story as an absolute creator. That person, man or woman, nun or monk, young or old, created all of the things you study today. For some reason, we never stop to give that idea some simple thought. Do you suppose the creator of Wing Chun, or Dang Sudo for that matter, created the punch, the kick, throwing, or choking? In fact, they did not. In no case does any origin story speak of a person who created everything within the style. The stories never say they did, but they conveniently never say they did not either. Giving credit where credit is due is not a common human practice. Humans have been fighting since before we were Homo sapiens. It is perhaps telling most origin stories include animals such as the stork or crane, tiger, snake, or praying mantis. It might be best to look to monkey style, because ultimately all fighting techniques come from our human ancestors. We have been eye-gouging, fish-hooking, punching, kicking, throwing, and choking since before we had words for those actions. Yet for some reason, we all accept origin and lineage stories as absolute truth, and envision some supreme master who had oracle-like knowledge to develop every little detail of the style we practice. It is common among many kung fu or Chinese styles to trace their lineage or origins back to the southern Shaolin Temple. The temple was under siege or attack by the government with full intent on the temple's destruction. In many cases, 5 masters or elders escape, and from them various styles are born. Funny though, the Shaolin monks currently travel the world giving kung fu demonstrations. We could suppose the temple was destroyed and later rebuilt, but that does not sound like a government bent on the temple's elimination. A relatively quick search finds conflicting information on the temple. Wikipedia, for example, has 2 distinct entries, one for Southern Shaolin Monastery, and another for Shaolin Monastery and/or Shaolin Temple. The first citation openly states all the information it contains is considered folklore, saying the Southern Temple's location and even existence is disputed. The second citation mentions these same folklore considerations for the Southern Temple as well as disputes its existence, but does not dispute the existence of a Shaolin Temple and its association with martial arts. It mentions the temple, the Northern Temple, was destroyed and rebuilt many times over its long history. Of particular note is the editorial suggestion the Qing dynasty recognized the temple's value as a historical marker of cultural distinction and invested in rebuilding it as it had fallen into disrepair. Perhaps the fires causing the monks to flee were cleansing fires of rebirth, and like so many people, they simply did not like change. Many stories of the Chinese arts become muddled due to the Boxer Rebellion or Boxer Uprising, both a civil and foreign war more or less provoked by martial art enthusiasts. Many schools and temples were disbanded, closed, and even banned in an act of reconstruction and reparations. Following the Boxer Rebellion, during the Sino-Japanese Wars, a Chinese martial arts rebirth took place. The rebirth was considered an investment in cultural traditions, along with an attempt to help modernize the diverse and struggling empire. Very quickly one can be dizzied by these stories. Often they stretch back to times when record-keeping was poor, information remembered from documents long lost due to changing governments, wars, and the ravages of time. Every style, every school, has their own twists which may not jive with a sister or cousin style and may not connect with other aspects of history. Winners rewrite histories in their favor. The majority of origin and lineage tales are propagated through oral histories. Any information relying on the spoken word alone suffers from interpretation and confirmational bias. It is a game of broken telephone, not only between individuals, but also over the space of time. In every story there is a kernel of truth. Someone, somewhere, at some time, pulled together some of the things that mark a style. Someone taught someone else. Something was handed down. Thinking back on those discussions in Sensei's living room and the oral stories of Motoburu and Shoriji Kempo, I had to wonder. A little research on Shoriji Kempo turns up nothing. However, two styles are close. Shorinji-ryu is an Okinawan karate loaded with recognizable forms and moves. There is also Shorinji Kempo, which translates as Shaolin Temple Fist Method, and connects well with that remembered translation, Way of the Hammer Hand. Shorinji-ryu translates as Shaolin Temple Way. As a Wing Chun practitioner, it is fascinating to find my first art and my most recent love may be distantly connected. It also explains many of the similarities with these systems. More importantly, this highlights the broken telephone problem with these lineage and origin stories. As we head back in time, we lose documentation. Some documents may be the written notes of earlier oral presentations. Throw in poor translations, intentional changes for advantage, differing languages, frail memories, slurred local dialects, and we begin to see how many of these stories are filled with more falsehood than fact. Did Sensei say Shoriji or Shorinji? Did he, as a Westerner, perceive it correctly from his native-born Okinawan instructor? Did he translate it well to me? Did I hear it correctly? Do I remember it correctly? No one knows. How could we? This all happened in the days before the Internet and the ability to cull tens of thousands of documents with a simple search phrase. Speaking of the Internet, there is a warning to consider. Another difficulty with lineage stories is something I will call splintering. When I left for college, Sensei Logue was still quite young. He was near the beginning of what would become a long martial art career. The history and lineage was his summit at that time, not the mountain he would eventually climb. The lineage and history you learn from your instructor is their history to that moment, with emphasis placed on their crowning achievements at the time they pass the history on to you. If you go on to accomplish some level of knowledge and pass on your lineage, it will include your instructor up to the point where you learned his or her lineage. That instructor may have gone on to other things, melding styles, bridging associations, and possibly even changing arts. As we look back in time, this splintering can create confusion. Some renowned individual claims instruction from another noted person in a specific style, though that senior noted person is known for a different style or art. How can the junior's claim be true? It may be entirely true. He or she may have left their instructor at some early point, long before their instructor went on to accomplish other things. This can make fact-finding and cross-checking of lineages and origins difficult. This will become an even greater difficulty in the Internet age. The Internet, as it is currently managed, favors relevance meaning current, the most recent. We all want our highest achievements noted. Past, lesser glories may be valid, but overwhelmingly shadowed, and thus forgotten. In fact, the Internet is geared toward pushing the past further and further into obscurity, favoring the most current. Add to this the marketing tricks of the Internet, and future fact-finding and lineage searches may become difficult and remain questionable. For example, if you look up Professor Archimedes Q. Porter, which is no different than looking up some instructor's name, you will find many references to several Disney movies. You have to search long, hard, and dig deep to find Edgar Rice Burroughs, the creator of this character, in his book Tarzan of the Apes. Internet relevance and marketing have made a key fact difficult to find. Imagine trying to find some ancient master following splintered lineages filled with mistakes, all overshadowed by only the most recent moments of glory or abject failures. Finding the truth of the past is often like trying to grab air. Regardless of the style you train in, you can be certain of a few things. The oldest parts of your style's origin story are largely false. At the very least, the story contains errors of omission. The creator of your style did not create most of it. The story is colored in your style's favor. Defeats are usually omitted. Only the most recent additions to your school's lineage can be viewed with any certainty. On the other hand, many of your style's techniques are not merely hundreds or thousands of years old. They are tens of thousands of years old, refined with the meticulous care of evolution.